Welcome to the Office Add-ins Developer Community Call. A little bit about the community call. If you don't already have the invite on the calendar, there's a link here at the top of the slide that you can use to get that invite. The community calls are the second Wednesday of every month, and the next call coming up will be on Wednesday, December 11th. Just a quick note, in the last month's call, I mentioned that we wouldn't have a call in November because we didn't have anything on the agenda, but as we got to chatting about it, it turned out we did have a few things on the agenda. So I apologize if there's any confusion on that. I hope folks are able to join today, and if you weren't, hopefully you're watching this on YouTube. So the call is an opportunity to meet the product teams behind the Office Add-ins platform and the API. It's a great way to see what's new, what's coming soon. We try to cover areas on that. We cover a number of different areas in each call. We try to do at least one technical deep dive into a particular feature area on the call. And sometimes we have customer presentations, so it's also an opportunity to see what peers in the community have been working on with Office Add-ins. As we go through the call, we'll do some Q&A, so this is a great opportunity to ask questions as we go along. Feel free to type those questions into the chat window, and we'll answer those as we get to the end of each section, or perhaps at the end of the call. If there's any questions that we aren't able to get to by the end of the call, we take all of those questions and put them into a blog that we put out in a couple of days and have the answers out there for you. Call agenda for today. So we're going to talk about Office Add-ins. So if anyone's new to Office Add-ins, we do a quick little overview of what they are. Then we're going to talk about some updates from the Microsoft Ignite conference last week. Then we'll switch over, talk about Office Add-ins SSO. And also we'll share out some documentation updates that we have. And finally wrap up with some Q&A. The presenters for today, we have a pretty full deck. My name is David Chestnut. I'm a dev writer on the Office platform team. And joining me today is Alex Jarabek, who's also a dev writer, and he helps me co-host the call.
Hello, everyone.
And we also have Nitesh joining us, who's a senior program manager. He's going to talk about SSO in a little while. And we also have Juan and Kayer joining us today. They're going to go over highlights from the Ignite conference last week. And also Michelle Sharlock, who's a dev writer on our team, and she'll be sharing some updates on the documentation with you later on. Mm-hmm. Let's switch over to Office Add-ins overview and what they're all about. And I'll let you take it away, Alex.
All right, thank you, David. Go to the next slide. So just so we're on the same page here about what we're talking about when we say Office Add-ins. So Office Add-ins are the modern web-based Office extension. And what an Office add-in is two components. It is the add-in itself, a web service that is running with all of your favorite web technologies, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and then a manifest file. And that manifest file is stored with your Office host. So it's put on your desktop or stored somewhere that Office for the web can access or uploaded to the store. That manifest configures your Office host to point to your add-in and tell your host how to run that add-in. And you can either sideload this manifest file so you can test out your add-in locally. You can send it out through centralized deployment to your organization, or you can upload it to the store, make it available for the general public. And this also allows it to run cross-platform. So you can have your same add-in running on desktop, on Mac, on iOS, on web, the same code base running across all those platforms with just one thing. And since this add-in is a web service, it can do anything a web app can. It can call other web APIs. It can access Azure functions. It can use Microsoft Graph. But what we tend to focus on in this call is the Office JS library, the Office JavaScript APIs. And those allow your add-in to interact directly with an Excel workbook, a Word document, an Outlook message, and so forth. So that's the quick overview. If you're interested in trying this out, you can head over to our documentation page, the AKMS Office Add-ins docs. There we have tutorials and quick starts. So you can get writing your first add-in within 5 minutes. Head on over there. And if you have any questions throughout this talk about add-ins in general, please put them in the chat. I'll be recording them. If we don't get to answering them during the call, we'll post in the blog summary. Or you can leave comments on our documentation page itself, and the dev writers will get back to you. All right, and with that, I'll give it back to David.
All right, thanks, Alex. So next, I'm going to jump ahead to the SSO topic and then come back to the updates from Ignite, because I know, Nitesh, you need to go first.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Nitesh. So I wanted to present to you an update about the Office Add-ins SSO API. So for some of you who might or might not know, the SSO API has been in preview from some time. What we've done in this time is one, look up to you, try to understand your SSO requirements, and based on that understanding, we've tried to give this API some shape. So thank you for explaining me all your requirements. I know a few months back when I came to this community call, I used it to get a survey out and get some responses based on that. And I interviewed a bunch of you. So thank you for your responses that helped us shape this API. Two, we've made some improvements to this API in the time that it was in preview. As a direct result, we've refreshed the API in preview and have created a path to take this API to GA in a couple of months, probably from now on, if everything looks good. And we need your feedback to help us accelerate along this path. Let me quickly give you a brief overview of the SSO API. Let's consider a PowerPoint application with an add-in running inside of it. The SSO API allows this add-in to sign in the user using the Microsoft identity and authenticate the user to our add-in. Point number one. Point number two, it also allows the add-in to access users' rich data on Microsoft Graph. Now you combine these two and what you get is a very powerful and useful API that allows you to create extremely user-centric experiences. Let me quickly show you what this API looks like. It's pretty simple. Now auth itself is pretty complicated and you'd have to handle a lot of edge cases like MFA, user not signed in, not consented. But at a very basic level, this API gives you an access token and allows you to pass on a bunch of optional parameters. We've added a bunch of these optional parameters to give you more control over the auth experience that you want to show to the user. But in essence, this API is pretty simple. It's office.runtime.auth.get access token. So with that, I'd like to quickly jump and talk about a few updates that we've made to the API. First of all, we've now come up with a really cool tool, which allows you to complete the whole SSO setup within 2 steps. If you'd seen what it was earlier, you'd have to register your application on Azure AD V2 endpoint. And that would take a bunch of steps and you'd have to copy and paste some stuff from there onto your project. We've taken all of that out. We've given you just 2 steps to quickly go and create a setup which lets you get started with SSO. And also it creates all the infrastructure for you. Moving on, in terms of API updates, if you'd seen what we had earlier, we had callbacks and the auth experience of login and consent was essentially controlled by Office. Moving forward, what we've done is we've moved to promises. This removes the need for nested callbacks, allows you to write very readable code. As you can see, by comparison here, this is the same code that's required for handling MFA. And it looks much smaller and neater when it comes to using promises. And with promises, you also can write async await syntax to make your code look like synchronous code. Second, we've given you more auth experience, control over your auth experience, like options like allow sign-in prompt and allow consent prompt. In terms of the support level, we'll be supporting SSO, and this is only for the purpose of the current release. We'll support SSO on Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, on web, Windows, and Mac. But more importantly, the scenarios that we'll be covering is going to be user authentication across the board. When it comes to access to Graph, we'll only support it for admin deployments for the purpose of this release, and we'll incrementally keep on adding more and more support later on. Which brings us to our looking forward slide. So looking forward, there are a bunch of things that we aspire to do. Now, we won't have these in our first release, but they're on our roadmap. Primarily, we'll want to allow you to access Graph when the user acquires the add-in instead of or the admin deploying it for its tenant. We'd want to add support for single-page applications. This is one of the requests that was made in the survey that I had presented. So a lot of you wanted not have a backend and use SSO directly from a single page application. We'd be adding dynamic consenting, which means you don't have to consent. You don't have to ask your users to consent everything upfront. Ask for consent only when you need it. MSS support on Outlook and OVA will be upcoming, and we want to add platform support on iOS and Android. So primarily a key takeaway from this discussion is that we've now laid a solid foundation for moving forward, and we'll continue to evolve the API beyond this point. Two, and more importantly, we'd want you to try this API and give us your feedback. And three, unless I hear some feedback that forces us to take some drastic actions, you'll see me probably another couple of months down the line announcing the GA date of this SSO API. Now, key next steps. Please take our survey and help us move forward to create some SSO samples. So download them, use them, give us your feedback. It works only on the latest insider builds. You have to reference our beta CDN for it. We've not yet enabled stored submissions, and that would be done once we go GA. And you can grab the latest API from this URL, and I'll copy paste that into the chat soon. Log any issues that you see, or you can shoot me an email as well. Be rest assured that we'd be actively listening to any of the issues that you face. That's all that I had.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nitesh. Next up is Juan.
So hello, everyone. This is Juan Balmori here. I'm program manager in Outlook Extensibility now, and I will give you a quick kind of a 5-minute recap of what we did in Ignite with regards to Outlook. So we have a session, and we were sharing with our community. First of all, it was great to be there and be with meet probably some of you during the conference and sharing what we are doing and what's coming. The big announcement for Ignite was the GA, the release of the Mailbox 1.8 API. So starting on the Windows build that you see in the screen, which is basically the latest update, what we call the September fork. On Mac, also in the latest update available, which is 16.31. And in November, during the month of November in online, you will be able to basically use this API for production. And as a summary, what the main feature areas that we have for this API is block consent. So again, the scenario here is the ability to create an event that is going to get triggered when a user sends an email. And as part of that handling of that event, you're able to either canceling the sending of the email or just proceeding and sending it. Now, during the session at Ignite, we demonstrated a partner, Egress, who has a really nice encryption solution. Basically, what happens is that when you classify the email as highly confidential or encrypting, basically during the send event, they get the content of the email as well as all the attachments using the new Attachments API, by the way. And they encrypt and send the email. So a bunch of scenarios here. The second big feature that it's out is delegate access. So right now, if you are doing shared folders, either for email items or calendar items, and you're going to be able to not only activate add-ins, we also have an API to get more information about delegate. Among other things, who is the owner of the folder, and also, what sort of permissions you have on that folder. So this is many people were asking for this feature. There are many scenarios that you can implement with this, as you know. The most common one, and actually was part of our demo during the session, was the Blue Jeans online meeting add-in, which basically you can actually allow a delegate to send meeting invites in behalf of another user, which is awesome. Then we also have internet headers. This is the API that you can use to store, kind of settings and include them, with the message as part of its header. So that means that it's going to travel with the mail across mailboxes. And we also improved this API, kind of in the last minute play, to get you on the JavaScript layer, basically the entire MIME headers. So previously, you have to call the graph or the REST APIs to get the MIME headers. Now you can get it, directly with the client with the JavaScript. So it's a great addition if you are interested in learning about headers, implementing security scenarios and stuff. Enhanced location, we also added APIs to go beyond just a simple string, for the location in a calendar. So now you can actually book a resource. If the resource exists, you can provide the ID, and the API is going to keep in sync, the location and the to line on the appointment, so that when you actually send, this meeting, everything gets booked. And finally, we also have client support for attachments. So here, again, previously you can do it, but you have to call the graph, you have to call AWS, you have to make a service call. Now it is available directly from the JavaScript. You don't need to call a service. And categories, you can add categories to both mails and calendar items. So that's out, guys. Please use it. I'm so looking forward to see how you use these APIs, and if you have any questions, please let us know. We also share with the audience what's coming in Outlook. We talked specifically about two scenarios. The first one was around online meetings in mobile. So we're going to start to do very kind of native integrations with the platform. The first deliverable is online meetings, and the idea here is that instead of having an entry point within mobile, as part of the kind of menu on Outlook Mobile, you'll have a real kind of integrated experience for online meetings. And the second one that we are very excited about, and probably in the next community calls, we're going to talk more details about it. It's about auto-running add-ins. So basically, up to now, in order to run an add-in, you need to go to the ribbon, and click a button, show a task pane, or execute some UI-less action. So now the team is actually working on what we call auto-run add-ins. It's basically an add-in that is going to work, in the case of Outlook, in certain scenarios. Like, for example, when you create a new email, you're going to be able to handle that event, run some code. When you are moving a calendar in the calendar view, and then you want to update, without having a task pane open. So it's going to be kind of super useful for you. We didn't go into a lot of detail, but we showed a couple of demos that are very interesting. One of them is the signature scenario. So the idea is that when you create a new item, just by creating a new item, we add, a signature coming from a service provider. And then finally, we talk a little bit about also some around how can you use SPFX in Outlook. And also, as Nitesh was sharing a few minutes ago, the single sign-on content that he mentioned is also available, obviously, in Outlook, so you should be able to play with it. And in the interest of time, the final thing that I want to tell you around the Outlook world, this is super important, folks, and we need your help for all Outlook add-in developers. So the team has been working in the last couple of quarters actually, on re-engineering the Outlook JavaScript API. So this is the reason why we're doing this is because we are removing the MSIX dependency, and also we'll have additional benefits like being able to ship improvements faster and reducing the size of the API around 30%, which means it's going to load faster and your add-in is going to be faster, which is great. But we tested. We already have extensively tested in multiple platforms, but now we're asking you for help, to help us test it. So the only thing that you need to do is you go to the previous CDN and then change your reference for the JavaScript API to this URL. So if you want to debug, use the second URL. I guess you're going to have access to this content, and if not, we're going to publish it as part of the letter. And just run your add-in. The idea is that your add-in is just going to work as it is working today. And if for whatever reason you see that it's not working as you expect, please let us know as soon as possible. you can log an issue in our GitHub repo, and we will actually track it. So we appreciate a lot of your help, and please help us ship this with the quality you deserve. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Juan. Quick question. Do you know if was any of these demos recorded at Ignite? Like, could we provide any links to these things in the blog? Because we put those in the blog afterwards if folks want to go explore this some more.
Yeah. Our session, yes, I think it needs a little bit of cleanup because there was a demo that showed some content that some email traffic there, and that needs to be removed. But as soon as it's cleaned, we will upload. It's going to be uploaded. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Okay. So next up is Kayer.
Hey everyone, my name's Kayer. I'm a PM on our Excel add-ins team. Like Juan, just recapping some of our awesome announcements that we made at Ignite. So first I'll talk about some announcements we made specific to Excel add-ins, and then I'll talk about some broad Excel announcements that I think may be relevant for the community. So we had a good session at Ignite, and I'm going to just recap what's new or what's coming. So the first thing that we announced was the Excel 1.10 APIs were announced, and that really allowed us to hit a new milestone, which was we now have over 2,000 JavaScript APIs for Excel. And really, this chart shows you the past couple of years we've been on this journey to really accelerate the number of APIs that we have with Excel, because we realize, hey, a lot of the Excel solutions have a lot of not only breadth but also depth in them, and so we needed a level of API support. But one of the things you'll also realize, you'll also start to see in this is, hey, we think we've gotten a lot of the APIs that you really need. If there's anything that's missing, I know there was something that was mentioned on the user voice and what's in preview, but if there are APIs you don't see in preview yet, we'd like to know. And for us, what we're really focused on is, hey, if you have a solution, you have 90% of the APIs, but there's 10% missing, let us know, and we can work to prioritize those in our investments. But overall, we feel like, hey, we're in really good shape in terms of most of the solutions out there. You will have an API for you. And that goes to speak to, hey, because of this, one of the things you'll find us do more so on the Excel side in the coming months is focus on other areas of the Excel add-ins platform and look to improve them. So looking at one of these areas. So one of the things that we heard from the community was with JavaScript test functions, which we GA'd at build in May this year, was that, hey, it was really hard for folks to share any sort of context between your custom function and your task pane elements, because you have to save everything to storage and read it back, and you'd have to pull it. So we heard that. We also heard that it was like you needed support for different authentication scenarios, not just OAuth, but HTTP only cookie support, full core support, and so we announced that preview and ability to go and share state. We have a new tutorial available at the link below that David wrote that shows you really exactly how to share state. And one of the cool things about this is that it now also lets your task pane to respond to events without it being open. So encourage everyone to check that out. We've had a few partners already help us verify that even before we went to public preview. So thank you to those partners. Now that we're in public preview. We just want to ensure that we're in good state before we make this capability generally available hopefully in the next few months. So talking about like, hey, moving just beyond like investing in like the core workbook level APIs, as well as just with the custom function context sharing, it's really the platform is evolving just beyond that task pane. So I think just looking ahead, a few other things to see. Nitesh talked about single sign-on. In the coming months, we'll have folks from our team share some new APIs around dynamic ribbon. So the ability to disable ribbon commands. We're going to start with Excel here, but we'll bring this to all of the platforms as well. On events, as I mentioned, being able to get notified of events without your task pane being visible. So if there's a piece of content that your add-in brought in and you need to respond to when users change that content, now your task pane, the user doesn't have to open that task pane. Your add-in can register itself to respond to a data change event. Likewise, we'll APIs to help you hide and show your task pane if you do need to show UI. And then the other thing we heard said the dialog API. Traditionally, the dialog API, or when we first implementation of the dialog API, was really meant for enabling your add-in to authenticate the user. And one of the things we found is partners also want to use that as another UI service. And right now, one of the limitations is you can't send messages to that. So that's what we're going to enable is a send message API. So we'll start with that, and then looking further ahead, we'll also enable you to call Office.js directly. So those were a few different announcements. We have a lot of great stuff coming, and again, as I mentioned, some of these APIs will start with Excel, but they're going to work PowerPoint output. So these are all things that are going to be consistent across our. So I wanted to also share a couple of announcements that we made from the just core Excel team that I think are of interest to the community. So the first one is Office scripts. So at Ignite, we announced a new capability to record and automate tasks inside of Office. So this capability will allow any Novus user to essentially record their actions. So as you can see here, I am making something bold. And what you'll see is it'll say what the user did, which the user bolded A1 through H1, that range. So it's not just the code, even for Novus users, they get that action. And these scripts in the back end, we're using a simplified flavor of Office.js. So we've abstracted away the context.syncs and like the async programming nature. It just looks and feels very synchronous of do this action, do this action, do this action. Another thing to call out here is these scripts will be stored in OneDrive for Business. So they're stored separately from their file. And the team will have great IT management capabilities because that's one of the big pain points we heard previously. So this is a feature that allows us to take our web add-in model and also make it more accessible to end users who need to record actions across Office 365. And so this feature is going to be coming to preview on Excel for the web by the end of the year, and I believe we'll get we'll have a deep dive once this launches. Right. Next item here, and this is dynamic arrays. So dynamic arrays is a feature that we announced at Ignite last year, and this really lets you return multiple values from a function. And if you have a JavaScript custom function, let's say you're returning an array of data, your values will automatically go and spill. So the user doesn't have to either Control-Shift-Enter the formulas. Likewise, your add-in doesn't have to have that logic, because we heard from a lot of you, if you had a function, you also had some logic to essentially simulate the spill behavior. So the cool thing to announce here is dynamic arrays are now rolling out to production. We're going to start to roll that out with Excel for the web first, and then it will roll out to a few different clients. My counterpart Joe did also want me to just remind folks, in some workbooks, if they were saved in a non-dynamic array version of Excel, so let's say you had a workbook that was saved from Excel 2016, and it contained a custom function. If you open that up on Excel Online, at least the very first recalc, you'll see an @ decorator in front of the formula. This is just our syntax that lets us know that, hey, this was saved from a previous version of Excel, but the calculations are exactly the same. And we will have a call out, so users will essentially be educated about that. But it's super exciting news. I know a lot of folks had mentioned when this was going to become generally available, and glad to announce. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kare. So I think up next is Michelle.
I'm going to give a couple updates of what documentation has been written, especially just around Ignite. But first I wanted to start by talking about some new curriculum, I guess I would call it, that's come to MS Learn. If you're not familiar with MS Learn, it's a different learning platform besides Docs. And in this case, we've come up with the Extend Office Fundamentals Learning Path. It includes 4 different modules that take you through, as you can see here on the right-hand side, most of the basics of Office add-ins, the Office JS APIs, as well as many other things. What's nice about this MS Learn content is that it does allow you to kind of get a higher level overview. So it's not as in-depth as the docs, but it's a great sort of like beginner level introduction to many of the concepts. Additionally, there's also an area at the end of each one of these modules, there's a quiz. So you can make sure that you really have retained the knowledge. And largely we've made this push to MS Learn because we do feel that it is a better self-learning experience, sorry, for developers. Yeah, so it's kind of a different way to learn things besides having to forage your way through various docs. There is a push to continue this path towards MS Learn modules. So in the pipeline, we have some modules being worked on for SharePoint, Teams, Graph, MS Identity, and possibly more to come. So keep your eye on that. We definitely will keep you updated in this call. So this will just show you the different modules. We just wanted to give you a preview of what that kind of looks like. You can see that a lot of people have rated this highly, so we're hoping that this really goes well. There's also the fact that this is kind of a gamified system, so you like learn. By learning more things, you gain more points. I don't know if that's exciting to anyone, but it is a feature. So the other thing to mention is that there is quarterly refresh content on developer.microsoft.com that has some of these trainings, but there also a lot of basically the stuff that we port over to MS Learn. begins in GitHub. So there's this quarterly refresh content that you can find on GitHub as well. So here's kind of a list of recent documentation updates. Don't worry about clicking on things now, because obviously you can't do that right now, but we will post all of these links in the blog. We've talked a lot about most of them, such as like the Outlook requirement set, the Excel requirement set SSO, as well as Kayer mentioned the tutorial about sharing data and events between Excel custom functions and the task pane. However, there are also a couple other things that I wanted to call out. There's a topic on handling and returning errors from your custom function, which allows you to sort of return your own custom error, as well as a common coding issues topic. So go ahead and make sure to read those and also leave us feedback. We do actually read your feedback, and it's a great way to get in touch with us. The docs include like a feedback section at the end, and that goes directly to us in GitHub. So we see that, we check it every day. So yeah, so
Cool.
That is it for me.
That's
Thanks.
it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. If you're interested in presenting at one of these community calls, definitely reach out to us and let us know. There's a link here to a form that you can fill out, the AKA MS Office Add-ins Engage link. So if you have an interesting topic you want to chat about and share with other peers in the community, it's a great thing to do. We've had customers present in the past some really interesting topics. So just fill out the form, some information about yourself, what you're interested in presenting on, and we will get in touch with you. You can also use this form if you want to just give us feedback about the documentation. If you have suggestions or ideas about things we can improve, definitely let us know. So here's some additional developer resources if you want to explore and learn more about Office add-ins and the APIs. We have some learning links at the top, which we need to add that link to the MS training, MS Learn stuff you're just talking about. But there's a link to the Office 365 developer program where you can get resources for developing and testing your add-ins. There's a link to Script Lab, which is a great way, like if you just want to look at samples of APIs and play around with them, it's a really good tool for doing that. And link to the docs as well as some custom functions information. If you want to engage with us, if you have questions or issues or things like that, you can ask questions on Stack Overflow, and we have a few tags there that you can use to direct your question to the right area. If you find a bug or some kind of issue in the product itself, you can go to this GitHub link and let us know. And we also have a user voice site where you can go and let us know if you have feature requests or things you'd like to see implemented down the road, and we take a look at those as part of our planning process. There's also the Send a Smile or Frown inside Office itself, which you can use to give feedback about Office, the product. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the call. I just want to mention that the recording of this call will be available sometime in the next few days on our Office Developer YouTube channel. And the next call, as a reminder, will be on Wednesday, December 11th, second Wednesday of the month. If you have any questions you want to submit in advance for that call, you can go to the link there for the Office Add-ins forum and let us know what the question is that you have. And once again, if you don't have a link for the call, a calendar invite, if you don't have the calendar invite, you can go to this link and get it, the Office Add-ins community call link. So once again, if there are any questions we didn't get to, we'll do a double check to make sure we didn't miss something. We'll put it into the blog summary that goes out later. And just want to thank everybody for attending. Appreciate your time, and we will see you on the next call. Thank you.